The Trump administration is in a tough spot. Donald Trump has announced all of these insane tariffs. They're gonna be wildly unpopular, wildly damaging, but they still have to try to sell it. And so here's the Secretary of the Treasury who wants to at least limit the damage coming from this by assuming or threatening other countries to not do what they're definitely going to do. Take a look.
And if countries retaliate, which some have said that they would, some have said they wanted to wait and see, what is the White House's response going to be to those countries?
Well, Kate, one of the messages that I'd like to get out tonight is everybody sit back, take a deep breath, don't immediately retaliate. Let's see where this goes, because if you retaliate, that's how we get escalation.
What I would say, Anne-Marie, is I would advise none of the countries to panic. I wouldn't try to retaliate, because as long as you don't retaliate, this is the high end of the number.
Yeah, here's the issue with that. The high end of the number is not just a number, it's high. That's why they're going to retaliate, because that's what always happens. And by the way, Scott Bessent knows that. He knows that, okay? Now, he's corrupt, rich a-hole, doing terrible things, but he's not as stupid as Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't understand how trade wars work. He doesn't understand how tariffs work, and he will literally never learn. But Scott Bessent knows what's gonna happen. That's why he's talking endlessly about the retaliation, because that's what you get. You know how I know that? That's even the argument that Donald Trump is making. He's saying we have to do that. They're not new tariffs, they're retaliatory because of their tariffs, even if in many cases they're not tariffs. It's literally anything they do domestically that he doesn't like. They're now saying are tariffs, so ours are just retaliatory. So hold on, why didn't we take a breath? Why didn't we pump the brakes? Why did we do the thing that you just said gets you retaliation, gets you escalation? Why did we do the thing that we don't want them to do and the thing that they're going to do? We've already seen it in multiple rounds of this. Canada has already responded multiple times to these announcements. Mexico's done the same thing. China has already done the same thing. They're all gonna do it. Some might not have quite the power of these larger economies, but they're still, in whatever way that they can, they're gonna do that. And maybe that's a direct policy that hurts us, jacks up tariffs, whatever. Maybe it's just like with Canada and Mexico, it's a moving away from purchasing our products. And so in ways that will be visible and explicit and transparent, but also in ways that will be harder to track, this is gonna hurt us. And Scott Bessent could not be clearer that he knows that that is coming. Okay, now I wanna get to even weirder ground. Let's move to Howard Lutnick now.
When you talk to leaders and your counterparts in other countries, are they telling you privately, yeah, we think it's time to negotiate?
It's unbelievable when I talk to these people. They say, I can't believe we got away with it for this long. I mean, seriously,
they tell you that.
It is outrageous the conversations we have.
That's
of course
unreal.
they do. I mean, come on, they don't take our products and they sell everything. Here's one quick story for you. In Korea, we started taking their cars in 2012 in exchange for us for selling produce and food there and agriculture. So McDonald's tried to bring in French fries. And you know what? They wouldn't let them take French fries because they said you couldn't prove the origin of the potato. Now that is the definition of a trade barrier. I mean, you think that's a joke? It's not. They offered me last week, they offered to take it away and let McDonald's take in French fries.
I love that he's putting it in terms that make it clear that he knows or maybe hopes that Donald Trump is watching. That's why it has to be about the potatoes. But anyway, okay, so he had a conversation and all the countries, I guess, were like, we can't believe we got away from it for so long. Don't you scoff out there. That happened, okay? They said that ridiculous thing that Trump wishes they would say. And you know what? Everyone in the classroom stood up and clapped. And that person, Albert Einstein. Most people don't know that none of this happened. Now, did they stand up, big burly men with tears in their eyes? We are governed by jackasses. They're all lying. Most of these lies aren't even for us. They're all just lying to each other. Because again, most of them, if it was up to Scott Bessent, if it was up to Howard Lutnick, we wouldn't be doing the vast majority of these things. They have massive stock portfolios. They can see how much damage it's doing, but they also know that if they're honest explicitly, they'll leak all sorts of things. Don't worry about that. And once they get yeeted out of the administration, they'll be super open. Scott Bessent is gonna be tearing Trump a new one inside of a year. Wait for that. But for now, Their jobs depend on them openly lying about the effect of this. And it's not to say that no good negotiations will come out of this, okay, perhaps, but it will be nothing. It will pale in comparison of the damage that is being done. Instantaneous prices being jacked up for everything that we buy. And Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent and Donald Trump and Elon Musk, they don't have to worry about that. They've got billions of dollars. They're gonna be just fine. But for those of us who were already struggling, those people across America who were already in such dire straits that they voted Donald Trump of all people back into the White House, they can't afford this, okay? Especially coming from such bizarre people like Howard Lutnick, who says about European meat, our beef is beautiful and theirs is weak. What are you talking about? First of all, dude, I don't want to insult any man's beef, but I doubt it. I doubt it. And they got some beautiful meat over in Europe. I think people can attest to that. Anyway, with that said, let's turn now to a little bit of those who are free, at least on some level, to be honest about this. Some Republicans are understandably already in a panic over Trump's stupid escalation of his dumb, boneheaded trade war. And they're coming out and speaking about it. Let's take a look.
Tariffs have also led to political decimation. When McKinley most famously put tariffs on in 1890, they lost 50% of their seats in the next election. When Hot Smoothie put on their tariff in the early 1930s, we lost the House and the Senate for 60 years. So they're not only bad economically, they're bad politically.
In the long run, we're all dead. Short run matters too. Nobody knows what the impact of these tariffs is going to be on the economy.
Anyone who says there may be a little bit of pain before we get things right need to talk about farmers who are one crop away from bankruptcy.
Okay, that is great to see them speaking out. I wish it was better people. They all suck. They're all ridiculous, but they're at least speaking out. I guess they feel insulated enough from the next election or from Donald Trump's social media activity that they can actually say that, and they're not wrong. Last dude talking about like the farmers, they can't, yeah, an individual, a small farmer cannot just wait 2 years, wait 5 years as you negotiate or whatever because Canada and China are like, we're not buying your products anymore. Again, it would seem to be impossible that Trump could not have considered the effect of these boycotts. Not just the boycotts, but sort of effective boycotts when the reciprocal tariffs come in on our products. But we don't have billions of dollars. We don't have the capacity to go through 8 bankruptcies or whatever and just figure it out afterward. That's it for these businesses. That's it for these individuals, and he doesn't seem to care. And Rand Paul, by the way, he's there talking not just about the economic damage, which is real, but also the thing that I would have assumed would have stopped them from doing this, or at least this crazy version of it, which is the obvious political ramifications. I mean, you don't have to go all the way back to Hoot Smalley or whatever. We don't have to, do Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Yeah, you jack up prices on a populace that has already said prices are too high and we desperately need them to come down. And why the hell would you expect that that would not hurt them? I just don't understand it. We've already seen the special elections from earlier this week. Districts in Florida went like 15 or more points towards the Democrats. You had the judicial election, despite all the spending of the billionaires, which we'll talk about more later on the show, shifting, I don't know, 10, 15 points, something like that. How can you not see this? And again, good. I don't want them to see it. I don't want all of us to experience this economic hardship along the way, but it looks like we have no control over that. Not even the Senate seems to be able to do much about that at this point. Some Republicans did join with Democrats to do this vote to rebuke Trump on the tariff policy. It was 51 to 48. 48 wouldn't even stand up. They know how stupid this is. Every one of them does. The issue is that it's largely symbolic. They're not gonna pass a bill that actually rolls this back. Even if they could, they're not gonna do that. And so, and why? Partially, he's somewhat within his constitutional authority to do tariffs. Again, I think there should probably be bounds of reason on how much, but also because they're terrified. And so Donald Trump puts out a post like this where he just lists like a whole bunch of the senators that voted against him, implying that they need to get on the Republican bandwagon, and how like he seemed to imply that he's gonna do tariffs on Canadian fentanyl. Please invoke the 25th Amendment, please, I'm begging you. But anyway, so there's a couple of senators that are not worried about this, that aren't terrified that he's gonna tweet at them or whatever. The rest, I mean, you have a couple of years until the next election, and I guarantee you, if you stick to your guns, if you stand with reason, rationality, then your constituents are going to thank you for that because you will be protecting them from economic hardship, the likes of which we have not seen in our lives.